Well, hello and welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show, where we are filling you full of fun-filled facts and fascinating features with my wonderful guest, Professor Ananth Viswanathan. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
You're looking very well, I have to say. I'm very well as well. Well, I'm
Excellent.
well, but I'm a little bit puzzled, and I'll tell you why I'm a little bit puzzled, Professor. It's because I've discovered that we don't have two, not even four when we wear glasses, but we have 3 eyes and 6 eyelids. What's that about?
Okay, well, let's deal with the eyelids. Yes, I mean obviously you've got 4 eyelids that you know about, pretty obvious. But if you look in the mirror and look in the corner of your eye, just there next to the nose, you'll see a little sort of pink fleshy triangle with a little sort of crescent-shaped fold on it. Now that's called the plica semilunaris, which just means the half-moon-shaped fold. And what it is, the plica semilunaris.
I can win Scrabble with that. I love
There
it.
you are. Get it on a double word. Good to go.
Hey.
And it's the remnant of a 3rd eyelid, which of course we don't use anymore. It doesn't work in humans, but lots of other animals do have it. So cats have it, and you might see it flick sideways across the eye. Lots of birds have it. So one of the nice things about it is, unlike our ordinary eyelids, it's not fully opaque. It's either transparent or translucent. So when a hawk, for example, is doing that 200-mile-an-hour nosedive towards its prey, it uses these eyelids, nictitating membranes as they're called, to sort of flick across like windscreen wipers to keep it with clear vision while it makes that final descent. And they're also UV blocking. So polar bears use them to not get snow blindness. So they're kind of sunglasses.
Well, they're very clever, those polar bears. I always have a lot of admiration for them. So
Yeah.
where's our one again? Where's our 3rd eye?
Oh, the 3rd eye, yes. So we now know that we have 6 eyelids, 2 of which don't work anymore. The 3rd eye, yes, that's another remnant. So that's something called the pineal gland, and it's deep inside the brain, at the back of the brain. And the reason you can sort of tentatively call it a 3rd eye is that the common ancestor of all the vertebrates, all the creatures with a backbone like us, had eyes at the front, but also a light sensing organ on the top of the head. And some primitive vertebrates like lampreys still have a sort of 3rd eye on the top of the head. But in later animals like us, this photosensitive organ has kind of become more of a vestige, and it just sits at the back of the brain, not sensing light. But it's still useful, and it still has things to do with light and dark, because the pineal gland is part of how we regulate our body clock. So it gets signals from our actual eyes, and that gets it to secrete hormones and so on, which help to control our body clock. So it's not just a useless vestige. It actually, it does something quite important.
Well, fantastic. So when people say about opening their 3rd eye, is that the bit they refer to?
Well, who knows? I mean, that's... I think that's very subjective. But, anatomically and physiologically, you could say it's a 3rd eye, because there are some nasty diseases of the eyes. And if you're unlucky, you get them in one eye. If you're very unlucky, you get them bilaterally. And if you're very, very unlucky, you get them trilaterally. So in both your eyes and your pineal gland. So it really is, you can regard it.
We start with good news today, that we've got an extra eye. We then finish with bad news, that you can get diseases and infections.
No. You have to be very unlucky to get those. But that's one of the reasons why you can consider it as, once being photosensitive.
Fantastic. Well, always interesting about the body. Are there any other bits which are remnants?
Oh, yes, there are lots. I mean, probably the best known one is the appendix. And again, this is one of those things that, although it doesn't fulfill its original purpose, which was to help our ancestors digest lots of plant matter, cellulose and cell walls and things like that, when we used to eat a lot more plants with tough stalks than we do now. That's why we can't just graze on leaves, because that part of our gut has become the appendix. It's still terribly useful, though, because it has a useful function in the immune system, and also it's a little hideout place on the side of your gut for good bacteria. So this is a positive point now, so that if you're unlucky to get a disease of the gut that kind of wipes out your good bacteria, actually some of them may be hiding the appendix. So when you get over the disease, they come out, repopulate your gut, and it's all good. So there's that. Lots of others too. There's Palmaris Longus. So you're into the long words today. We've had Plica semilunaris. Let's have Palmaris Longus. So this is a muscle in the forearm, and some of us have it and some of us don't. And you can tell if you've got it by if you touch your thumb and your last finger together, right? And then flex your wrist like that and look underneath here. If you see a cord-like structure that pops
I got
up,
one, doctor.
flex your wrist a bit. Yes, you have.
Wow!
Very good, very good.
Result.
Well,
So how good is that to me? What does it do to me?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, what it was originally for is when our ancestors used to break it, used to swing through the trees. It was one of those muscles that helped, gibbons and so on do that. But we don't do that anymore. So we don't need that.
It's Friday night. I'll be
obviously you can do it because you've got a Palmaris Longus, but I can't.
Talk me through. People looking at home, show me this then. So this is there. And so
no, you see, there's a little cord that people at home will be able to see, that little ridge that's appeared on your wrist there, running backwards. That's your Palmaris Longus. Yeah, that.
Fantastic.
Whereas on mine, nothing. See,
nothing. There'll be no swinging for you.
Nothing. And what's good though? What's good news for you though is if you're ever unlucky enough to need a tendon graft because you've had an injury, you've got a spare tendon.
Oh, look!
Because you don't need your Palmaris Longus. It actually doesn't contribute to grip strength anymore, but surgeons use it to get the correct sort of material to help repair you if you need it. So that's totally
good. So there are bits of me which are spares, like a spare tire.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's one in the leg as well. It's a tiny little muscle.
It
does nothing. Yeah, plantaris, and it's useful for grafting.
So as I've got one in my arm, in my hand, am I likely to have one in my leg as well?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. No, I think it's variable, but I don't actually know the answer to that. I don't know. Maybe.
Being in this truncated Zoom world, I'm probably not wearing any trousers.
Exactly. So yeah, let's not go into that.
but it's like things like, so there are bits of our body that we no longer use. You talked about some of that.
Yeah.
Like the tailbone as well. It's another.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, the tailbone, or the coccyx as it's called. When we used to have tails, it was very useful for attaching muscles to. And still, when we're developing in the womb, for part of our development in the womb, we do have a tail, but it then goes away before we're born in most cases. Although, there are a couple of dozen case reports of people being born with an actual tail, but you just remove it surgically and it's not a problem. And the coccyx still is an attachment for muscles around that part of your body and pelvis. So it still has some function, but it's not, like it was when it was a tail. And we have vestigial reflexes as well. It's not just bits of anatomy, it's things we do. So the grasp reflex. So if you get a newborn baby, and put your finger in their cute little hand, they will grip it surprisingly strongly. And a proportion of newborn babies can support their own weight doing this. Now, I wouldn't suggest you do this, but you can get a newborn baby and get a little stick or a piece of string and just hook them onto it, and they will just dangle there quite happily. As they grow up, once they're no longer, very new to the world, that reflex disappears. And we think it's from the time, again, when we were in the trees. So if mum got startled, the little baby ape would be able to cling on to mum's fur and she could run up the tree. Now, we don't have fur anymore and we don't run up trees. So we don't need that reflex, but it's still there, which is kind of interesting.
And this is what I love about this frolic through the fascinating fields of fascinating facts, is that we do find out about these things. It's rather like babies when they swim, isn't it? Because they're instantly, as soon as they're born, that you can put, well, no, I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but they swim very, very early, don't they?
That's right. They have a natural diving response, which is, we think, from when we were aquatic mammals. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Very much so.
Professor, it is always a delight. I feel particularly good that I've discovered a spare
there you are.
later on, as well as my third eye. I started off being a bit worried, but now I'm delighted.
No. Good. Pleased to hear it. Professor,
thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thank you again for joining us for the fascinating frolic through those fields of fascinating facts. Do join me, Andrew Eborn, another time. You can be a guest if you'd like to, or have suggestions. Write to guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. You can also follow me at Andrew Eborn @octopustv, and don't forget to subscribe. It's free. Everybody's favorite 4-letter word. Do it now while you think of it. But for me, for now, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.